But it also shows me, like, but wherever you are on global climate change, it doesn't matter. What matters is, it says that, my system has produced enough electricity perhaps to heat. I think this morning it said one home for 46 days so far. And, it also shows, much carbon reduction. And I'm not saying, I don't want to get into the climate debate, but nevertheless, it makes you feel good because you're doing something better for the world. And there's that value to it too. Just like I mentioned, and why you've been quite involved in this, conservation projects. So whether it be soil conservation, you can, I hear people say, well, cover crops cost me. Well, maybe it costs you something to plant them, but there's the value, and we never know what the value is of what all the positive things is done for the soil. And I think solar projects are a lot like that too. And in every community, every county, every community, there are people that can afford to do it strictly because of the value that it does, other than and Lyle, you've done an excellent job of presenting the numbers, so I thank you.
Well, I have greater access to numbers, so that's.
If I could piggyback on the comments about environmental benefits, if you go through Alliant, you can track on the internet what's going on, and they give you can look at it every day, and they translate what the effect of our system from we put it online the end of September of last year. Over 8,000 pounds of CO2 emissions saved, equivalent of planting 215 trees, or the equivalent of lighting 17,000 light bulbs for a day or something. So put it another way.
Exactly. And yeah, my little system, my little monitor shows the production, and I just did a checkup, 365 day, and the carbon offset of that was 8,100 kilograms, so you're talking about 9 tons, something like that. So, that's significant because it does have an effect. One other thing I want to mention, I'll take your questions, then I'm going to get back to a conversation I had with Brian Cranberry from REC. So remind me, yes.
I'm real green at this, and what is the first maneuver?
I'm sorry, what's what?
What's the first maneuver? Have the contractor come out and plant it and see the power company?
Yeah, because what the contractors will do is they'll come out and do a site survey.
Mm-hmm.
And the site survey is a little thing that looks at the sun and shows you how the shading is going to affect that. So you want to find a location that is least impacted by shade. And that gives you the maximum access to the sun. And once you start that conversation, then you find a place to mount it. It's going to be on the roof or it's going to be on the ground. And there's different ways to mount it on the ground. There's movable things, there's not movable ones. There's single post, there's multi-post. There's on the roofs, if you have the standing seam steel roofing, they mount directly on it. If you don't, you have to put brackets. If you have it mounted on a pole barn, you have different issues because the rafters go the wrong directions. You have different bracketing things. So they would get into those details, but first of all, you have to have a site to do it.
You don't have to contact your power company then?
No, that has to be contacted ultimately. But the contractor that you have to put these things in will lead you through that process. And depending on who your electric company is, the process is different.
Okay.
Brian Cranberry is the director at Hawkeye REC, and I sent him an email just first of all thanking him for some of the things he writes in his magazines, just information about that he gives to us about how the insider stuff of the electrical system. But a few months ago he wrote one that I thought was particularly interesting, talking about how the wholesale cost of electricity varies so dramatically. And you pointed out, you mentioned the peak electrical usage, and we all know that peak electrical usage is crazy, but I didn't realize how crazy it was. He said that the cost of electrical wholesale power can vary from about 2 cents a kilowatt hour to up to $85 per kilowatt hour in the peaks. Well, that's if they have to buy it on the spot. Well, okay, my point to him was that it doesn't take many, you can get a lot of 14-cent purchase of my solar to offset 1 hour of $85 electrical. And I said, so I thought it'd be really interesting if somehow we could get information about what the real-time wholesale rates are that they pay. And so I just asked if that is even feasibility, because it sure would be nice to know, you know, because I said, I can reduce a lot of electricity use for $85 an hour. And if we know that, knowledge is power. And you know, all of us who are sitting here, we're thinking about this because we actually want to do the right thing. We don't want to waste, we want to contribute. Well, he responded very quickly, and he said, so we had a good talk, and he said, first of all, I'm very pro-solar. He said, I think there's tremendous potential there, and we're trying to figure out how to make this work. He said, you know, one thing to understand is that we have a purchase agreement with Dairyland until 2056. So they have to work within that purchase agreement with Dairyland until 2056. So they're trying to figure out how to do this within their own system and how to match the mission of affordable and reliable power with that of you know, the solar stuff and distributed electricity. But he did say that they're going to be putting on their page a link to MISO, whichever, I don't know what that means.
Midwest Independent System Operator, controls the grid in the
Okay.
upper Midwest of the United States.
So they are going to be putting on their website, hawkeyerec.com, the link to MISO's wholesale prices at the moment. So you should be able to see during a peak what the actual wholesale prices variations are. So I hope that they're going to be, they're trying to figure out how to deal with this whole thing. I kind of trust it too. Right. Yeah.
Are these panels and components, are they American-made, most of them, or are they?
Oh, they
mostly-
vary all over the world.
Yeah.
There's American-made ones, there's Chinese, there's Taiwanese. That's probably the three major ones. And some companies which are American have them made in China. Some which are China have a plant in the U.S. Some of the China ones have them made in Taiwan because there was a change in the tariff to prevent dumping from China. So they just switched the production in Taiwan. They're not affected by dumping. There's name brands. One of the questions is, what do you buy? Because you're buying a long-term product. So what good does a 25 or a 15-year warranty do if the company isn't there to back it up? And technology companies are notorious for disappearing. And very few exist over the lifetime of the expected lifetime of the panels. So that's a real challenge, and the prices vary significantly. But that use your contractor as a guide.
Have any of you been through a hail event yet? How do
No, but they're supposed to be fine with it. They're tempered, I think, so.
Didn't you what?
Hail.
Hail.
Yeah, though they are.
It's tempered glass on top, just like your car windshield. So until you get a hailstone that's probably 2.5 inches in size, it probably will be fine. But that's what insurance is for.
Yeah, it depends on what the direction of the hail is, how it relates to the angle of the,
Okay, so back to your question, I basically depend upon my installer. I think here in this area, you go with a reputable vehicle, and you'll get reputable products because they won't be around for a while.
there's one other thing. Do you have central or microinverters?
Yeah, I'm fine.
There's three major technologies here. There's the ones that are called a central inverter, where the whole thing comes into an inverter and it changes it from DC into AC. In the big box, it takes care of all that, and that's connected to the meter. And then the other one is that there's microinverters, which there's an inverter under each of the panels, and the panel, that inverter converts the DC output of the panel into AC and sends that directly into an aggregating place that goes into the grid. Then there's a third one. The advantage of the microinverters is, well, claimed advantage is that they're more efficient. Another advantage is that they can give you a readout of what every panel's production is at any given time. So you can see where the inefficiency are occurring or the failure occurring. Central inverter is more like in serial. It does the whole thing at once. And the shading that occurs on any panel within the string connected to that inverter, it drops to the lowest production of any panel. So if you have a shading problem, microinverters minimize the impact, but they cost significantly more. Whether they're more efficient or not, I don't know. I'm producing about the same range as the guy who has microinverters that I know is producing, so I don't know.
I do have micro.
Just didn't know what they're called.
Right.
But they cost a little more, yeah.
Question for any one of you guys that put it in. When you were deciding on what size that you needed, did you go by current use, or did you have any wiggle room basically for expansion? Did you have any of that, did you consider that a?
Expansion in the location?
Yeah, no, expansion in usage, you should say.
Oh, well, I went with what I had room for and where I wanted to put it and what I could afford. So I could add more if I wanted, you know, but I didn't plan for that.
You want to think on both ends on that,
Yeah.
actually. I mean, if you're gonna have a car, electric car, or you're gonna have kind of whatever that's gonna get more power in the future, but you also need to be thinking about, well, what if I upgrade all my lights and end up using
Right.
less power? Because you definitely don't want to be overbuilding your system the way the net metering works out for you.
Yeah. And we just did an energy district audit on our house, and, you know, so they plugged some leaks, and we dropped 500 cubic feet per minute of air infiltration. So, in theory, we're gonna be a little more efficient to replace some lights with LEDs and CFLs if we have to replace. So, you know, reducing energy is very important too. So I think, you know, once you've targeted your mind, you're now focused already on the right thing, which is how can I reduce my energy usage, and with it, the bill. And that's a combination of less usage and production of your own. It's a balance.
I think we'll stop there. I said I'd get you out of here at 11:30, so you have plenty of time to visit with the vendors. I'm sure our panelists would be happy to stay and visit with you. Let's give them a hand. I mentioned Larry Grimstad, who's on the board of the Winneshiek Energy District, as I am. So is Barb Mossman, who was in here earlier, and her husband Tom. I think they're probably out at their table right now because they're vendors. Lyle Luzum has just agreed to join our board along with Kyra Bell Richard, who's out at NICC. And the other members of our board are David Carlson here in Decorah and Craig Mosier, one of my colleagues here at Luther. So if you have any questions about the Energy District, feel free to contact me or just call the district directly. Thanks for coming today. Thanks for your interest in solar. Please stay in touch. Let us know how we can help you, both the Luther Center for Sustainable Communities and the Winneshiek Energy District. So, thanks very much.
Yeah.
25 years.
Well, yeah.